Hello, everyone, and welcome back to our Bible study for an exciting day. We are in Psalm 100 today. We are two-thirds of the way through the book. We are almost there. Maybe another, 2 months, month and a half, if I don't miss any days, which is somewhat unlikely based on my schedule. Sorry I missed yesterday. I was at a conference for Christians who live in Europe, and it was really good, but it was super busy, and my wife and I ended up meeting a bunch of people that we knew, and so there was not a whole lot of breaks. It was go, 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 and so sorry I didn't get up this study yesterday. You would think I would be able to get this one up because it's only 5 verses, but alas, I was busy. But it was a good time. Now this psalm is pretty short, but it is not the shortest psalm in the Bible. Does anyone know the shortest psalm in the Bible? Or actually just the shortest chapter in the Bible. It is one of the Psalms. If you know it, leave it down in the comments. It's very close to the longest chapter in the Bible. I think a lot of people know the longest chapter. Less so know the shortest chapter. So if you know, leave them below. If you want the PDF for this chapter, you can get it on our website at tobelikechrist.com. Let's talk about it. Psalm 100. The author is not named, and I am unaware of any references in the New Testament back to Psalm 100. You'll notice that our first page today is very skimpy, in part because the psalm is so short. We do have some themes. Number 1, God is a good and kind creator. And number 2, he is worthy of thanksgiving and worship. And we do not have any definitions. I don't think there's any words in here that people are really going to struggle with or have any hard time with. So with that, let's move over to page number 2. Now, I think my outline today is actually longer than the text itself, but oh well, what can you do? The title today comes directly from the text. Know that the Lord, He is God. Verses 1 through 5. So the psalmist called for joyful worship to be sent up to heaven in praise to the Lord. He called for the people to serve the Lord with gladness. A lot of times people think of serving God, worshiping God, as just something that they have to do. They have to serve the Lord. They have to go to worship on Sunday morning. We just got to kind of get this done because God demands it from us, almost as if it's a drudgery. But that's not the way that is presented by the psalmist. He says that you can do it. You can serve the Lord with gladness. And he's going to talk about how good God is and how serving and worshiping God should be a delight to us in light of how kind God is to us. But he calls on all people to worship with joy, to serve with gladness. The writer wanted all people to understand their relationship to God. You know, there is a sense in which we are obligated to serve God because we belong to Him. He created us. We're like sheep living in God's pasture. We live on His earth. And so, but he mentions next that serving God wasn't to be thought of as a burden. And if you understand God correctly, you won't think of it that way. God is a kind and a good creator, and the people had many reasons to be thankful to Him, many reasons for joy. So our short psalm ends this way in verse 5. For the Lord is good, His steadfast love endures forever, and His faithfulness to all generations. So that is Psalm 100. Okay, now let's finish up with our application for the day. Just because a Bible passage is easy to understand doesn't mean it is easy to apply and to live out. Psalm 100 is a very short psalm. It's very straightforward. You know, we didn't even have any definitions today. It's easy to understand, right? Understanding it doesn't demand a lot from our brains, but embracing it demands a lot from our hearts. How many people in our modern world refuse to accept what is taught in this simple psalm? Namely, that we are created by God, that we belong to Him, that we should serve Him, that we are sheep in His pasture, and that we should be spending our time worshiping Him instead of just being, focused solely on ourselves all the time. Many won't acknowledge this psalm's teachings because they can't humble themselves to accept it. These truths are even forgotten by believers sometimes. Not that they literally forget that the Bible teaches them, but they fall into patterns of living that come about through neglecting or through the neglect of applying these principles, these truths. When you've read and you've understood the teachings of the Bible, that's when the real work begins. Humbling your mind, your heart, and your will to God's truths and allowing them to lead your life, that is the real challenge. Comprehension is just the first step. It's one thing to hear the words of God as an academic pursuit or to fill your head with knowledge. It's another thing to hear the words of God and change your life to live in alignment with them. Now, of course, we know that God's going to help us to do that if that's our desire. So we're not just left out here on our own, right? But it's still, that's the real challenge, not just the reading. Sometimes well, I guess I'll talk about that in a second. But in James chapter 1, verse 22, James writes that our desire should be to be doers of the word and not hearers only. He says, because you can deceive yourselves. We don't want to deceive ourselves by believing ourselves to be godly just because we sat down and we read our Bible today. A truly godly person is one who reads the Bible and then applies it and changes their life accordingly.